The Tech It Up Talk podcast aspires to educate, inform, and inspire educators from teachers to school leaders on tips, tools, and resources to support the integration of technology into classroom instruction.
You ready? Here we go.
You're listening to the Tech It Up Talk with Dr. Mac, your host with the most passion for supporting educators from teachers to school leaders with the integration of technology into instruction. Today's episode is going to dive into a crucial topic and really one that's important about adopting an EdTech mindset in educational program initiatives. And so with the rapid rise of AI and evolving digital resources, educators need to stay ahead of the curve. And I have just the guest to help us explore this. And I'd like to invite and join me, John Amenson. He's a leader in educational technology with deep insights into fostering innovative mindsets in schools. So welcome, John, to the Tech It Up Talk podcast. Just give us a little bit about your journey in education.
Sure. Thank you, Jocelyn. It always feels like home when I get to work with you again. So I'm glad to be here. A little bit about my journey. I've been in education for about 18 years. I was a teacher for 3 years, and then a technologist in the school. And then I got to join the district level on an actual EdTech initiative, which was my first program that went in there. And I've been working with EdTech and special programs ever since.
All right. Well, we're talking. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please. Well, we're going to go into some more details. We're going to go into more details about that in a little bit further in this podcast.
All right. Well, in this podcast, we're talking about having an EdTech mindset. So can you share with us, what does it mean to have an EdTech mindset, and how does it differ from just using technology in the classroom?
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about the differences, because that's really the first thing that teachers and educators go to, is they just think it's using a tool, using some sort of resource that makes it EdTech. That is part of using EdTech inside the classroom or within a school. But getting that EdTech mindset is you're really thinking about the details as to why you're using certain tools, what your outcomes are going to be. You're doing some deeper thought into it, and you're making sure that everybody's involved. So it's just not a single teacher within a classroom that's doing something, which is great when they're doing it and trying things out, as long as they get positive results for the kids. But when you're starting big programs and initiatives for a school or a district, there's a lot more moving pieces involved, and everybody has to have this idea that they're all going to understand what's going to be utilized, how it's going to be utilized, all the different layers that are going to be used. And everybody commits to following that program to get the desired results that they're going to want, and hopefully have those results and changes within the school culture happen over years, not just in a single year.
All right. Well, also share how school leaders and educators in general, how can they shift their thinking to integrate this mindset into their own school initiatives?
Sure. So let's say if you're a principal and you have some teachers that are working with a certain class program, maybe your ELA classes, your math classes, science, whatever it might be. But it's an overall school initiative that you're kind of overseeing, but you have other people that are really the leaders in this thing. As a leader of them, you want to really support what they're doing. So you can do that by kind of mimicking any kind of tools that they might be doing, letting everybody know that this is an important part of the program. So if it's an ELA program, that's great. But if you're other teachers that are involved with those same students, you want to be involved as well, right? They want to let everybody know, from the principals down to the custodians, that everybody's got a part to play in this. And because everybody shares the students, right? And if you're really trying to change the mindset of the students and stuff, you want to be supportive of everything that's happening within that campus. And so if that means you can utilize some things when you're working with, let's just say, faculty meetings, or maybe when you're working with your parents in a PTO thing, you really want to kind of spread this out so people really know you're looking for a cultural change in the school. We're not just doing a one and done package inside of a classroom.
Yeah, one of the key things that you shared that I think is really important for school leaders or anyone looking to implement initiatives is the mimic piece. So modeling what you expect to see. A lot of times I feel like school leaders feel like they must have it together in order to leverage technology and have it, done correctly. But a lot of times they're uncomfortable with it too. But which makes them uncomfortable with leading with it. And so, you want to definitely empower your staff and your team to really be innovative and really change the mark on how we see innovation done by addressing your own uncomfortability with it. And so even modeling some of your expectations and what you want to see in your schools is really important in building that culture piece. And so,
No, I think you're right. And I think we were always telling kids that they have to be lifelong learners. And the truth is we all have to be. That includes the teachers, the administrative staff, everybody's a lifelong learner. And the technology industry and education moves fast. And there's going to be things that we utilize and have great usage of, and they come and go, right? And so it's a very fluid industry, and you have to be up to date with it. And so something you did 10 years ago is not going to be the same stuff you're going to be using now.
Right.
You got to kind of evolve and go with the flow of it. And you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's part of the process of learning. And that's what we're actually asking the kids to do in the end result. So modeling it for them and letting them know that we're willing to learn new things too, to help them, I think will benefit everybody.
Yes, love that. Love that. What challenges do you see educators or school leaders facing when they're adopting digital resources or AI tools? And what are some suggestions you can say or share that they can overcome those challenges to really stay innovative?
I think they need to look at long-term planning. There's a lot of work and effort that goes into these programs. And if, some people are working with grants, some people are putting a lot of resources together with other collaborators at all sorts of different levels. And I think you need to think long-term. Like if you're utilizing some grant funds, let's say, in over a 3-year time period, then you should really think, what are we going to be doing to make sure we're going to have the finances to fund this beyond that time period? There's not a single program that's going to work a miracle in 2 years, let's say. We're trying to really move the needle with every program we're doing. There's not a magic pill. There's nothing that's going to fix things that aren't at the levels you want them at. All we can do is try to move the needle in a positive directions, small portions at a time. And with all the different initiatives that districts are running, if they all do that, then we can actually maybe help the students move kind of a little chunk at a time and kind of grow on that. So when it comes to funding, you just don't want a program that you funded for 2 years and then at the end of it, you go, oh, we don't have any more money, program's closed, and you lose all that forward momentum that you had going and you kind of got to start over. The other thing that happens is people move. There's personnel changes all the time. And if you're running a successful program, there's a good chance you're going to get tapped and go, hey, you did great with that project. We want you to come lead this other project. And those people get promoted and move on. The leadership that you had agreements with, whether they were on district level or principal levels, sometimes they move on and new people are coming on board. So I think there's this whole transition of when onboarding comes on, so there's a new onboarding process for somebody, a principal or maybe a leader of a project or a teacher within a group. You really need to onboard them as to the history and the whole program and where they fit in there and get them to buy in the same way that everybody else has bought in. So it's more of a seamless fit and they continue the positive programs for the kids. Because this really is about the kids and we don't want it just for the kids that are here today. We want it for the kids that are coming tomorrow and years to come, right? That's the whole point of changing the culture of this concept. I've seen it way too many times in my years where programs have been very successful and then they just disappear off the map. And the one consistent thing that's there is that there's been a lot of movement and fluidity within the personnel changes and everybody comes with their own new ideas. They want to make all these fixes. But if something's working and it's positive, they don't all work. But when they do work, we really need to try to keep that momentum going and not let that program die out.
Yeah, I love that. So I personally, of course, have experience with this because I started as director of digital learning for a school district. And when I started that role, one of the things that was really important, we always have career changes. You never know when you're going to have an opportunity to shift and move. And so you want to go in with the mindset, that student first mindset, that you're supporting an organization, and like the personal feelings about who you work with and their initiatives and their goals really has to be set to the side, because at the end of the day, we're trying to serve our students and our kids. And so when you're bringing in the initiative, sustainability is really important. So one of the things I quickly done was create systems that would help anyone that would be after me to be able to go ahead and follow through. That means coming up with a plan and documenting what that plan is. What are the moving pieces to the roles? Who's are all the people that are involved with the stakeholder piece, and defining those key moments of what you need. And sometimes I think we adopt things without really thinking through the initiative fully. And I can remember, sometimes, in the school district I was supporting previously, we would have requests for certain, technology. I'm like, well, what's your implementation plan? You want to have a plan because I've seen so many times that you go to a conference, you get the latest tool, the latest thing that's going to be the best thing since the last thing you heard. It's going to really be transformative. You're going to see these different results. But if there's no implementation plan, even the best thing can still fall short of your expectations. And so definitely having an implementation plan, thinking about how you want to move, what are your challenges you're going to face, and kind of think through some of those pieces before you even implement. And how are you going to measure its success?
Right.
What are you going to do to get feedback?
Yeah. Speaking of measurement, you need to have an idea of how you're going to measure and adjust your metrics and see how things are going along the way. And actually, you're talking about feedback, going through there and seeing what's working, what's not working, because hardly ever do you do the initial plan and it works just the way you planned it out. There's all sorts of unknowns that come in the way, and you've got to make those adjustments that are necessary in order to keep it moving in a positive direction. And everybody needs to know that, because when you get a program that's really working, there will be lots of other departments that are like, hey, what are you doing? How can we take what you're doing that's working with your kids in this certain program and make it work for ours? That's really where the growth is going to be, right? We want to help the kids, not just in one particular area, but in all the areas. But you have to find that initial setup, right? And it gets difficult. And I think this whole commitment of making sure that the leadership from the top down is on board and they're talking about it all the time. And this isn't just like, oh, we're going to have a quarterly meeting about it. I mean, it should be brought up every time all the major stakeholders are together. Even when a new initiative comes on board, you can talk about new initiatives and the new things that come up, but you still have this on the agenda. You're still talking about it. You're still holding people accountable so they know it's important. So they don't have like this, oh, what's the top thing that I'm supposed to be doing? No, here are all the things you're supposed to be doing, and this is part of that list for the entire year or years.
Right. So, you are a contributing author to the book, Get Your Tech Together, Rethinking School Culture in a Digital Age. Yes, right there. If you guys don't have a copy, please make sure you go get one. What's great about this book is we have different thought leaders who really share different perspectives. And one of the things that John talks about in his chapter is downfalls of, these different initiatives that we tend to bring into school districts. And we kind of shared some of those, but I definitely want to be specific in talking about potential and historical downfalls that can potentially happen in EdTech and AI initiatives. And so if you can kind of just share more of that understanding, especially for our school leaders who are listening or anyone who support school leaders and their thinking. Yes.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few. Some of the major ones we'll talk about I think are important. And we talk about personnel changes. When there's major personnel changes, I think people need to be brought on board. And if you get a program, like I said, that maybe needs to be phased out for something else to replace it because it's not working, that might be a thing. But if it is working, then I think it's important to see how it can be part of a vision of newcomers that are coming in, how they can adopt that to help it continue on or maybe even work at a higher level. When we talk about the financing, if there's financing involved, that's actually a big thing. And, this is education. There are budget shortfalls, things happen. We just had a thing where we had some, everybody had some federal aid because of COVID and stuff, and that's kind of gone away. And a lot of people grew dependent on that and didn't think about how they were going to finance these things afterwards. So money's always an issue. And if that's part of what you got to do, then you got to make sure you lock up that funding to help support your program. And then talking about the tools, these are businesses, right? We're in education. They're an educational business. that we're utilizing, but they change, and that market changes all the time. So you can't get comfortable with the idea that those resources that maybe you're utilizing will be there for the entire time. We've seen things come and go, and we've seen great tools and resources that just disappeared, and then we have to go find something else. We just had this thing recently with and this is not really an educational resource, but TikTok was going to go away and everybody was going to panic, and it didn't. But when we talk about non-educational resources, everybody chooses tools that they want, right? Students use their own personal tools that they want, and if things change there, they'll go find a new one. We have to do the same thing when it comes to educational tools. If we find something that works, but then all of a sudden it disappears, its pricing structure changes, something happens, there are other alternatives there. And that's why you got to kind of be in the market to see what's working at the time, what's going to work best for you, because you can always make changes.
Look, when you said that just brought up a memory, and this is an educational tool. One of the ones that I know that a lot of us in education love was Microsoft Flip. And a lot of people became dependent on it. I know when they moved into just the Microsoft ecosystem, it changed a lot of perspective, especially I knew that a lot of our multilingual departments are starting to lean on those skills to help with speaking, listening, and writing, because it was just a great way to do it. Like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And so, so I was like, I wanted to have a moment of silence for Microsoft Flip, leaving some parts of education, because it was such a great tool that a lot of us were dependent upon. And what do we do now? Of course, we're making things happen still, but it's just that idea of not just being just solely dependent on one thing. In your
that's actually a great example. I'm glad you brought it up, because that one not only changed, it grew and changed. It was even getting better for us, and then it kind of got taken away. But in lieu of that, there's a lot of other programs that were educational resource programs that said, hey, that's going away. There's a big need. We're going to add functionality to our bunch of different programs and tools and resources that can do the same types of things, right? Because I knew there was a market for it. So there's 3 or 4 companies out there that have ramped up. I'm not going to go into details, but I just came from a conference and we were talking about that specifically. And there are tools out there that have kind of added that functionality to that we can go to. And that's what I'm saying, that if you lose one, there's other alternatives out there. You got to find out which ones work best for you. And it may be tools that you're already utilizing that have enhanced their levels, right?
Yeah.
Their features. I mean, that happens all the time. These companies, the EdTech resource market is a huge market. It's growing every single year. It's in great demand. So these companies are adding features all the time. And I'm not a big proponent of changing things within a year. I kind of like to start the year with students, teach them what they can do, and then kind of ride out the year. And then we can introduce new things if different features show up in the following year. You just don't want to do too much. You want to get them used to learning the tools so they can be successful with the tools and the resources that they have. One thing we haven't brought up, which is actually super important, is AI. AI has changed this entire field, because whether you want to play with it or not, there's a couple things that are super important. One, all these digital resources and tools, they're all using AI. They're all using it in the back of their package to enhance and give more features. So you need to follow that. But also, as an educational institution, you need to have AI policies for your district. It's super important that, because your teachers want to go out there and play and try things, or they're scared of things, they don't know what to use. And so you have to have these policies in place and tell them what they can do, how it should be utilized, what teachers are able to do, and anybody above that level in administration. And then with students, it's like super protective right now. So you really got to have those policies in place. Don't leave that on your teachers to decide. The districts should set those policies up, have trainings for your teachers so that they feel comfortable with what they're able to do. Because there are some great enhancements that are going to have a positive impact. And then there's some areas where you can get in trouble too. So you really need to know.
Yeah, I like that, because, of course, one of my things, I'm always training on AI and finding a way to do it. And it's really also, I know sometimes I think we focus so much on the negative part of what it can do, or what we feel like it take away from education. the truth is, like, what can it do to really enhance upon it? So, like, for example, here in Texas, writing is the big thing, right? And so we have a writing initiative, and there's state accountability that that schools are rated on, but they're leveraging AI to rate and score those writings of our students. And so, like, why not teach our students how to be better writers with AI? And how do you do that? And so those are definitely some initiatives I think that are worth revisiting with guardrails, of course.
I'm going to age myself. When I was a teacher, I was a middle school math teacher, and we taught 8th grade, and we did not let our students use calculators at the time. I think that was one of the last years that they weren't using calculators. And so I made them learn how to be successful without a calculator. And now they've become so dependent on it. And, you know, as a math teacher at the time, I'm like, hey, you can't do that, because I need these kids to actually know how to do math and how to figure these out, how to problem solve and do things the right way. But it's so commonplace now, people don't even question it. Eventually, 10 years from now, AI is going to be like, you know, the calculators were back then. You know, it's just going to be part of the tool, because we're going to figure out how to utilize it and still teach the kids how to learn all the problem solving skills and stuff that they need to do to be successful in the classroom. And so, but it's going to take a while. And lifelong learners, remember, that's us, that's them. We are going to pick this up. But AI, you know, just like we were talking about the educational technology resources and tools that are out there growing and changing so fast, AI is doing it at a speed that's so much faster. It's exponentially faster than what we were doing before, which we already thought was fast, right? So, and it feels like we're not going to be able to catch up. But those that are in the field and kind of want to play in that sandbox and make that part of their career, they're going to find ways to kind of be in those conversations. And that's the important thing. You know, you can't just say, this is what we're going to do, and we're not going to look at anything else, you know, for the next 3 years. No, because you'll come out and you'll feel like you're in the Stone Age. So you gotta stay current with what's going on. Not everybody, but some of those leaders that are in there, and then it's going to be their job to kind of pass that information down below for the teachers that we're focusing on what they need to do with the kids.
Yeah. Well, if educators and leaders who may be watching take one action after listening to this episode, what should it be to start really fostering an EdTech mindset in their schools and their school district?
You know, you talked about it, like mimicking. If you've got some programs that are in there and you can do some modeling and stuff, I think that's the initial thing you need to do. I think when it comes to trying to put together a new program, we're in the middle of a school year right now. So there's a lot of people that are thinking about programs for the following school year. You can utilize AI as an administrator to help, you know, use some prompts. There's some great prompts that are in my chapter that'll help you in the book, and that will help you devise a plan, right? And tell you how, you know, teach you how to ask the questions, how to really give some thought processes into how you're going to measure the success, who's going to be all the stakeholders involved, who you need to get involved, what that collaboration is going to look like. Mm-hmm. Utilize those tools. I think AI is here, and it can, for those people that have done it and used it, it's really helpful. Now, this is not a copy and paste thing ever, you know, and you got to go and verify what it's telling you just to make sure it's real. But once you do that, and it's a thought partner, right? And when you use it as a thought partner and an assistant to help you do that, it can help you with a lot of stuff in the past that used to take a lot of time. Yes. And I think it can save you time. It can help move things a little bit faster. And I think there's a great benefit that it can have for education if it's used in the right way.
I love that. I remember I had one teacher share with me how they really started changing their own mindset about AI. I think they were an English specific teacher. And so the students have to do a lot of writing. And so instead of just getting the writing samples from the students, it's now, well, let them leverage AI and then start asking, well, how did you change this? How did you use AI to do this? How do you prompt to then enhance your pieces here and there? And so he really started to rethink how he was leveraging the tool versus just saying, here's your assignment. Here is the topic you need to write about, submit your papers, and then I just grade it and give it back. Speaking about giving back feedback. Oh my goodness. Feedback
Yes.
is so much a gift, guys. So that's definitely one way to even leverage it for yourself, for your students, to really help with enhancing their writing. I use it every day. Like I don't know what I would do without it. So prompt engineering is me all day long and really trying to be more effective and efficient with my time. Even trying to organize and get your podcast running when you're ready for it. We have multiple things going on today. It's like if you're not using it, you're definitely have time that you can gain back, and it definitely helps with maximizing that time. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jocelyn, you need an AI agent to remind you when to charge your phone and devices.
I do. I do. That's definitely.
It's a thought partner. I guarantee you can train it to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, if listeners are thinking about that, that's the main takeaways, right? I mean, I think you should really think about modeling and supporting your teachers that are doing this, and especially if you want to grow. Like we said, there's a lot of people who, when I started in EdTech, quite a while ago, about 12 years ago, and we first were introducing one-to-one into our district, and we used some digital resources at the time. There was a lot of fear factors with the educational staff and the teachers and how comfortable they were. And some people just didn't want to do it. Now that's kind of changed where everybody kind of wants to do it now, but they're not in the market of seeing all the resources there and how it should be done, right? And we've always talked about, don't use technology for the sake of using technology. Have a reason why. What are the results you're trying to get to? How are you going to measure to see if it's successful? And we're still on that boat, right? There's still a lot of teachers out there that they want to do it, but the majority of them are not going to be very proactive and just jump in there and do it. They want you to kind of have somebody in that district that can help hold their hand as they kind of wade into those waters and try it out. And then once they kind of get a feel for it, then they'll get more comfortable with it. So I think it's also important to have people within your district that are those experts, right? And that could be at a bunch of different levels. I'm not going to say how that should be structured. I've seen it work very successfully with a couple different models, but you have to have those people involved that are going to be those EdTech experts, and now that are utilizing AI. You almost can't talk about EdTech without talking about AI now, because it's so ingrained. There's like two separate things, but they are like this, and eventually it's just going to be one thing. It's going to be the same thing eventually.
Yeah, I love that. Now, I know you said, to have the right people in place, but I don't want that to take away from our school leaders who are listening. That doesn't mean that you still don't be a consumer of that resource, because we talked about early on when the first podcast first started about modeling and mimicking and modeling expectations.
You can be that leader. You should be that leader. I mean, those are the people that are really, like we said, moving. My thing has always been about moving this needle, right? Everyone's like, did it work? Right. Did it not work? And I'm like, what are you measuring that by? How did it work? If it's moving the needle in a positive direction and it's kind of living within your features, we don't do anything in 1 year that just fixes problems, right? We're just trying to do it in small little chunks at a time. And I think that's the biggest thing where people don't follow through on the holistic scales. People need to look at this and say, what's working, not just at the end of the year, but throughout the year, to make it the most successful year it can have, whatever that year one's going to be. And then even if it's successful, just don't say, okay, well, that's great, we'll just do that again next year. No, what can we do to improve upon these? Because there's no such thing as perfection. You just make things the best they can be at the time. And people really need to look at that. And these programs are not just a one and done thing, like we said earlier in the deal. We really want them, if they're going to be culture changing, that means they'll be there forever. And so we've got to find a way to build that sustainability in so they can last forever. If it's a positive thing for the students, you need to find that way. It's important to do that. And then there's a lot of competition in all districts of every size. There's multiple initiatives every single year. But I have seen personally initiatives where there's been a lot of top-down participation with stakeholders talking about it. And that program when I first came to the district level, it's still going on now. all these years later, because that was built in, right? And then I've seen other programs where that wasn't in there and they were successful, but then there's been little changes here or financial thing, and then they just blip, they're off the map, and then something else comes on. And the most disappointing thing is if you were moving in a positive direction for a certain group of kids in a certain area, and then it disappeared, and then you start over, and then you got a program that's not as good as what you had, you're just like, it can be a little frustrating.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for. You want to add some more, John? Go ahead. We can.
I was going to say
we're live, so people are watching us. So give them more. Give them more.
It's just super important for that people get involved and start looking at these things. And so, if you're somebody who has been in this group, please continue to do so. And hopefully, if you get a chance to read the book or talk to some of us that were writers in this book. I'm very proud to be a part of this project. Jocelyn's been asking me to be part of it for a while. And then when I got to meet all the authors in this and talk to them personally and read what they wrote, and I'm very honored to be part of this project. And I think it's a big thing because every district can grow in a positive way and help this culture of their campuses and their districts move in that direction. And I think it's important, especially for the future of education. So,
yeah,
reach out if you have any questions.
Yes, look, yeah, for sure. And look, we have someone. We have Safali. She says future ready skills demand that we need to leverage technology, AI, and put in parameters to teach some ethical behaviors and boundaries. Part of that digital citizenship piece. So thank you, Safali, for sharing.
Oh no, that's super important. That's super important, and that should be the first place you start with your AI when you talk to your teachers and when you're introducing this to students at some point in time. That ethical behavior of how it's going to be used, it's super important for them, so they know how to use it in a positive way.
Oh, look, John, you have someone else here. LJ Henderson, the Gem of STEM, is tuning in, and she says it was a pleasure meeting you, John, at the book signing. So say hello.
It's good to see you again. Hear from you.
Okay, and Safali added one more thing, that collectively we can really surely move the needle. So I definitely agree with that. Thank you so much. Yeah. So thank you all who are tuning in, watching us live. We appreciate you joining us. Of course, we'll be live every Wednesday. I want to thank John for joining me today, of course, and sharing his expertise and insights. It's clear that adopting an EdTech mindset is essential for navigating challenges and opportunities of AI and digital resources in education. We have educators. If you are ready to level up your learning, be sure to subscribe to the Tech It Up Talk podcast for more inspiring conversations. We're going to have more authors join us. We'll have more partners join us who are out in the world, in the field across the country, who are implementing these different initiatives and really sharing some insights. And so don't forget to connect with John to learn more about how you can lead with innovation in your schools. And until the next time, keep innovating, keep inspiring, and keep leading with tech. And so we want to thank you guys for joining us today.